All right, so you want to know about stress in those contact centers?
Mm-hmm.
We're going deep with this one. Using some research straight from the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and get this, the title of the article is Stress in Contact Centers Inevitable?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. And, you were asking if all that tension we hear about is just like baked into the job,
Right.
or if it's more about, specific roles and how companies do things.
Like, is it the job itself or is it the company?
Exactly. And honestly, some of the findings really surprised me.
Well, the cool thing about this study is that it wasn't all theoretical.
Wow.
They actually looked at 15 different contact centers.
Wow.
So we get to see how things play out in the real world, like how different company cultures and practices can really impact those stress levels.
So you're saying not all contact centers are created equal?
Definitely not.
Okay, I'm with you. But before we get too deep, let's back up a second. We're talking about a huge industry here, right? Like, contact centers are pretty much essential for tons of companies these days.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's how we connect with businesses for, well, almost everything. Customer service, tech support, the whole 9 yards.
And it's grown like crazy, right? In the past few years, especially.
It's exploded. Just to give you a sense of the scale, they have over 80,000 people working in contact centers in Portugal alone.
Seriously?
80,000.
Yeah, according to their contact center association, anyway.
That's wild. Honestly, when I picture a contact center, I just think, like, stressful,
I get that.
Dealing with upset customers all day, maybe getting yelled at. It sounds rough.
Yeah, you're right. It's a common perception, but that's exactly what this research tries to figure out.
Yeah.
Is it actually that stressful across the board?
Mm.
Or is it more nuanced than that?
And what did they find?
Well, turns out it's not so simple.
Okay, color me intrigued. One thing that really caught my eye in the study was the difference between front office and back office role. Yeah, that's a key distinction.
So first off, what's the difference? And why does it seem to matter so much when it comes to, stress?
Okay, so picture this. Front office is all about direct contact with customers. Right.
No?
They're the ones answering calls, responding to emails, handling live chats.
Right.
Basically, all the customer interactions go through them. Back office is more behind the scenes, supporting all that frontline activity.
I see, like the support crew.
Exactly. Things like data entry, processing orders, even tech support that's not customer-facing.
Gotcha. So does that mean the front office folks are basically destined for a more stressful time?
Well, the research actually found that one of the biggest stress triggers in these contact centers is how much control people have over their work.
Ah, I see.
Or really the lack of control, I should say. And this was especially true for front office workers.
Because they're stuck to those scripts.
Exactly. Imagine you're trying to help someone with a complicated problem.
Right.
And they're frustrated, but you're stuck reading from a pre-written response that might not even address the real issue.
Oof. Yeah, I can see how that would be annoying for both sides.
It is. It's incredibly frustrating for the customer, and it also leaves the employee feeling powerless, like they're trapped.
Makes sense. And the study found that front office workers said they felt more burned out and like they struggled more with work-life balance than the back office folks, right?
That's right. And it gets even more interesting.
Really? How?
This lack of autonomy, it's not just about your workday. It can actually have a psychological impact.
Wait, seriously? Like, what do you mean?
Well, imagine this. You're supposed to be helping customers, but you don't actually have the authority to really solve their problems. That can lead to feeling helpless, especially when you're the one dealing with their frustration.
Like you're set up to fail from the start?
Kinda, yeah. And that is a recipe for stress.
Okay, starting to see the big picture here. It's not just about dealing with tough customers. It's about feeling stuck in a system that might not be designed for success.
Exactly.
Which makes me wonder about company culture and if that plays a role too.
You're spot on. The research actually found that stress levels and well-being varied a lot across the 15 different contact centers they studied.
So even if the work itself is similar, the actual experience could be totally different depending on the company.
Absolutely. That's one of the big takeaways here.
Wow.
It means that company culture, how management treats people, and all those HR practices, they all play a huge part in shaping how people feel about their jobs.
That's huge. So we're not just talking about the job itself, we're talking about things that can actually be changed.
Exactly.
Okay, so what kind of company culture are we aiming for here? What makes a difference?
Well, the study talks about this concept called organizational citizenship behavior.
Uh-oh. Sounds kind of jargony.
I know, right? But it's actually pretty simple.
Okay, break it down for me.
Basically, imagine you work somewhere that makes you feel truly valued and supported, like they've got your back.
Okay, yeah.
You're more likely to go the extra mile,
Yeah.
right? You'll help out colleagues, share new ideas, contribute to a more positive atmosphere overall.
I can see that.
That's organizational citizenship behavior. It flourishes in companies with those supportive cultures.
It makes sense. If you feel respected and appreciated, you're going to be more invested in the company's success, too.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
And this brings us to the nitty-gritty. HR practices.
Ooh.
The study looked at everything, like recruitment, onboarding,
Mm-hmm.
training, compensation, performance evaluations, the whole shebang.
Wow. Really went all in.
And guess what?
What?
They found a lot of room for improvement across all those areas.
So it's not just about having a good vibe in the office. It's about actually having systems in place that support people, right?
You got it.
I'm really curious about those specific HR practices they looked at. I bet there are some real gems in there that could help companies create less stressful environments.
Oh yeah, there are some real game changers in there. We'll dive into all those details right after this.
Okay, so we're back, and I'm ready to hear about these HR practices that can make or break a contact center's stress levels.
All right, let's jump right in. We'll start with recruitment.
Okay.
Contact center jobs, they often need people with a high level of, emotional intelligence.
Right, dealing with those tough customers.
Exactly. You're dealing with people who are often frustrated, maybe even angry. So you need to find people who can handle those interactions with grace and empathy,
Makes sense.
That's where skills-based recruitment comes in.
So instead of just looking for someone who can read a script, you're looking for someone who can actually handle those tricky conversations, maybe even de-escalate things when they get heated.
Exactly. It's all about setting people up for success right from the start.
I like that.
And that brings us to onboarding.
Oh, yeah, onboarding.
A good onboarding program can make a world of difference.
In what way?
Think about when you start a new job, right? It can be so overwhelming. You don't know where to go, who to ask for help, what's expected of you.
Yeah, totally. I hate that feeling.
A solid onboarding program helps smooth all that out.
Okay.
It sets clear expectations, introduces new hires to the team, makes them feel welcome and supported from day one.
It's like a buddy system for new employees.
Kinda, yeah. And that's especially important in a fast-paced environment, like a contact center.
So they don't feel like they're just thrown to the wolves with a headset and a script.
Right. And then there's training.
Ah, yes, training. Everyone loves training.
Well, this kind of training can be really valuable.
What kind?
Regular training, especially in those soft skills.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Things like emotional regulation, conflict resolution.
Okay.
It gives employees the tools they need to handle those tough situations more effectively.
They're not just reacting on instinct. They have actual strategies they can use.
Exactly. And let's not forget about compensation.
Yeah, money talks.
Having a fair and transparent compensation system can make a big difference.
How so?
Well, feeling valued and fairly compensated can really impact job satisfaction.
It's like, hey, we recognize the challenging work you do, and we're going to pay you fairly for it.
Exactly. And that can go a long way in reducing resentment and stress.
Right, because if you feel like you're being taken advantage of, that's just going to add to the stress.
Exactly. And finally, we have performance evaluations.
Ooh, everyone's favorite.
Well, the key here is to focus on development and feedback, not just on hitting those metrics.
So it's not just about how many calls you answer or how quickly you solve issues. It's about helping employees grow.
That's the idea. It's about creating a culture of learning and improvement rather than just pressure and fear.
Because constantly feeling like you're not good enough, that's just going to bring people out, right?
Speaking of burnout.
Yeah, let's talk about burnout.
It's a word we hear a lot these days, but what does it actually mean in this context?
Right, what are we really talking about here?
The study looked at two main aspects of burnout: exhaustion and cynicism.
Okay.
And they found something interesting. Exhaustion was pretty much high across the board, no matter the company or the role.
So feeling drained and exhausted is almost like a given in this line of work.
Yeah, it seems that way. But cynicism, that's the negative attitude towards work, that varied a lot.
Interesting. So it's like everyone's tired, but not everyone is jaded.
Exactly. And it makes sense when you think about it. Constant high demand, it can really drain your emotional resources.
It's like your phone battery constantly running low.
Perfect analogy. That's exhaustion. But cynicism, that's more like switching the phone off entirely.
To prevent it from dying completely.
Right. It's a coping mechanism. Your brain is basically saying, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm out.
So it's like a self-protection mode.
Exactly. And it often happens when employees feel like they're not supported or they don't have the resources to deal with all that exhaustion.
Which is why those supportive HR practices we talked about are so important.
Absolutely. They can help prevent that downward spiral into cynicism.
Okay, that's actually pretty hopeful. It means that even if exhaustion is hard to avoid completely, cynicism can be mitigated.
With the right support systems in place.
Right, so it's not all doom and gloom.
Not at all. And speaking of things not being all doom and gloom, the study also found something pretty surprising about the connection between the work environment and stress outside of work.
Wait, really? So your job can actually impact your well-being even when you're off the clock?
That's what the research suggests.
That's wild. Okay, we need to unpack that. So we're saying your job can affect how you feel even when you're not working?
Yeah, it's like, if your workplace is always stressing you out, it's hard to just shut that off when you leave.
Right. It's not as simple as just leaving work at work.
It can stick with you.
And affect your mood, your sleep.
Even your relationship.
It's like this constant low hum of stress.
It really highlights why it's important to create work environments that are, more human.
Places where people feel valued, not just like cogs in a machine.
Exactly, where they feel respected, supported.
Because that can actually make a difference in their well-being.
Not just their work performance, but their overall well-being.
And it's not just some feel-good idea. The research actually backs that up.
There's data to support it.
Which means we can use this knowledge to advocate for better workplaces, right?
Absolutely. We can push for companies to actually prioritize employee well-being.
Not just as a bonus, but as a core value.
To create a culture where people can thrive.
So let's talk about what that looks like in practice.
Okay, so we've talked about ways to manage stress individually.
Right, like mindfulness, exercise, getting out in nature.
Talking to someone you trust.
Those are all great tools.
But what about on a company level?
Yeah, what can companies do?
Well, remember those HR practices we talked about earlier?
Things like skills-based recruitment, good onboarding, regular training.
Fair compensation. Performance evaluations that focus on development.
Those are all really good starting points.
Right. Because when you implement those practices, you're sending a message.
What kind of message?
That you value your employees, you support them, you want them to succeed.
And when people feel that way, it can really change how they experience work.
Less stress, more engagement.
Overall, better well-being.
And it doesn't have to be these huge overhauls.
Yeah, sometimes small changes can have a big impact.
Like just encouraging open communication.
Creating opportunities for people to connect and support each other.
Fostering that sense of community.
Because we all want to feel like we're part of something.
That our work has meaning.
Well, this has been a really interesting deep dive.
Yeah, we covered a lot.
And hopefully it gave you, the listener, some food for thought.
Maybe even inspired you to make some changes.
Whether in your own workplace or just in how you handle stress.
Remember, stress doesn't have to rule your life.
We can create workplaces that are productive and de-supportive.
Where people can thrive.
That's definitely something worth striving for.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been great exploring this with you.
And until next time, keep exploring the things that matter to you.